How do you get transferred to a better prison? Or even more, how do you get transferred to a better state? My name is Jesse, and I spent 19 years in the Virginia prison system, and everyone is looking for something different in prison. Some people want a program, so they wanted to go to Buckingham because we had more programs and opportunities, and there were all kinds of things you could do. Some people wanted to lift weights, so they might want to go to Augusta because they had the best weight pile in the state. Some people wanted to get high and use phones, so they wanted to go to Lawrenceville because it was privately run. It was just flooded with anything you could think of. Remember one guy talking about how he had an iPad, not like a phone that you could hire, an iPad. I was like, all right, that's a different thing. But the way you get there can be complicated. If it's just going down a security level, that would seem straightforward, just stay out of trouble, right? But the way the rules are set up in Virginia, if you have a long sentence, more than 20 years, you have to spend 20 years in or be 20 years to the gate, basically 20 years away from your release, before you can go down to a level 3. So what that means is all these guys with life sentences and 50-year sentences are stuck at these higher levels that are not good places to be because you constantly have young guys and people running their time up to get there. So they made an exception for that. They turned Buckingham into a level 3-4, which meant you had the privileges of a level 3, but you could be a level 4 and be there. So we ended up with all the old heads, all the lifers, all the guys that had a bunch of time, so they carried themselves well, they understood respect, but at the same time, they weren't trying to be into the craziness. They just wanted to do their time, they wanted to program, they wanted to grow and make the best of it, so it was a really good camp, and that's why I fought to stay there as long as I did. But sometimes you have to run your level up. Because if you go down to that level 2, that dormitory, nobody wants to be there because you've got 82 people packed in a room. And this is not as bad as some states where they have 300 people packed in a room. But there's no privacy. The showers are open. The toilets are open. Like you're literally knocking knees with somebody if you're using the bathroom. It's just a terrible place to be. And some places will kind of go above and beyond and give you more rec or give you more other stuff. Other places actually have less, in which case, what's the benefit of being there? So guys there will sometimes run their level up. They'll catch charges, they'll refuse to go back to the dorm, or they'll just pack their stuff and put it by the door and make them transfer them. So a lot of times going to a better place can mean catching charges and spending more time in prison, which sounds crazy. So if I was going to design a prison system, I would have everybody start at a medium or a maximum and work their way down to when they're going out the gate, they're getting more privileges and more responsibility. So going to a lower level is a better thing. You want to do it, and then you go to a work center, and then you go to a halfway house. Because I don't care if you have a murder charge or you have a robbery charge or you have a breaking and entering. If you are going to be getting out, we should not take you from a high level and then just throw you to the street one day. You should be stepped down, because if you are getting out, you are not more dangerous the day before you get out than you are the day you get out. So there's no reason you shouldn't be able to be at a work center the day before you get out, but be free the next day. It just drives me crazy. Now, the other thing is getting to other states. So Virginia was actually a pretty balanced system. It wasn't as violent as crazy as other places. It had a lot of programming. Like, there were definitely issues, there were definitely things we could improve, but it's not a bad system. So some people would want to come there, but other people wanted to go better places, like Washington State, where they have conjugal visits and they have all these opportunities. And the only way you can do that is what's called an Interstate Compact. So you have to basically apply, and all these states have come to an agreement that says, hey, for example, if somebody from Washington gets locked up in Virginia, but all their family's in Washington, it doesn't make sense for Virginia to keep them. So Virginia and Washington make an agreement, all right, like we'll take one of yours for every one of ours, and basically we'll swap. So what I was trying to do, because I had no living family left other than my mother, was get my mother to move to Washington. She was saying, hey, I'm retiring, I'm thinking about going somewhere else, like maybe I'll go. And I was like, hey, if you lived in Washington, then my only family would be in Washington, which is a requirement. You can't have anybody local, and I'd be able to move up there. And that would be amazing because, yeah, conjugal visits and all these dreams, who knows if that's realistic? Who knows if that even makes sense? But it was one of those things that guys did. I knew a guy, he waited 4 years to get to Connecticut because he was married and they had conjugal visits. So he was like, cool, I'm going to get up there. And from what I've heard, he isn't eligible, or they changed the rules or whatever it was, but he spent a bunch of money and waited all this time to go to a different state that the thing he went there for is no longer available. So I guess it's a toss-up, but it's one of those things where you imagine, like, hey, they have all these things over here, like, what do I have to do to go over there? Especially if you have life, or especially if you have a long sentence, or especially if you have actually family in that area. Sometimes that backfires, though. We had a guy who went up to, I think it was Wyoming, and he had heard it was great, it was all single cells, it was horrible. Like, he wrote back and he was like, man, I've seen more blood and more stabbings in the 2 days I've been here than in the entire 5 years I was in Virginia. Like, what did I get myself into? Because some systems are really just kind of crazy and have different dynamics. But if you're going to get to a better place, whether it's a better prison or a better state, it really is about aligning with your values and what you want to do. And that's why it was so important to me to figure out what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be in prison. Because at first I went in and I was letting other people dictate who I was. I was letting other people say how I was supposed to do my time. And so I was around the wrong people, and I'm playing poker and I'm getting into stuff and I'm getting high. It was such a waste of time and waste of opportunity. Thankfully, I ran into some old heads who had figured it out, who'd recognized, hey, I have all this time and I can either waste it or I can make the best of it. So they got me into education, they got me into meditation, they got me into all these things that fundamentally changed my life. And from there on out, I was trying to stay at or get to the place that was going to allow me to live my best life, allow me to grow the most as a person and prepare for my release, because I did everything I could. I read parenting books, I was meditating, I was in therapy, I was in programs, I was teaching programs, I was doing all these things because I wanted to be able to succeed when I got out. And there are guys in there with that mindset. And what breaks my heart is they tend to be the ones with the longest sentences. They tend to be the ones who have the least chance of getting out, where the guys with short sentences that are getting out tend to be in there gambling and fighting and gangbanging and just getting in trouble. And that always breaks my heart, because the people who are working the hardest are often the ones who have the least likelihood of getting out.